we can now officially welcome everybody to LA Ford Institute's Measure G 101 teach-in. You are in the right place if you're curious about a package of reforms that LA County voters kind of narrowly passed in, depending on where you were, in the large county of LA back in 2024. There is an implementation task force that is well underway, and we want to catch you up to where all of the conversation is, because we know there is a desire for community engagement in the implementation stage of Measure G, and we want to make sure that folks are caught up, and that way you're able to plug in as you see fit. I'm going to ask my colleague Jackie to click to the next slide. If you are newer to our space, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Godfrey Plata. My pronouns are he and his. I get to be the deputy director at LA Forward Institute. We're a nonprofit interested in igniting democracy across our city and county. And that means people, regular people at the table alongside their decision makers and policymakers to ensure that our government works for us. And part of the reason why we're hosting the Measure G teach-in is that Measure G in its passage and in its implementation will impact more than 10 million of us in the county. That's huge. And as a package of governance reform, what that means is that it's about creating rules of the game that will govern everything that happens in the county. Go ahead and click to the next slide. What we're going to do is lift up some of the work that we've plugged into through a big coalition called Our LA. R stands for Organize, Unite, and Reform. Our LA was started in the aftermath of some leaked audio tapes that you all may remember from a couple of years ago, where we heard LA City Council members and a labor leader be in cahoots behind the scenes, wanting to draw the lines of the city of LA and redistrict based on their self-interest and based on, frankly, some racist ideologies, misogynistic ideologies, xenophobic ideologies as well. RLA came together to say, oh, no. We are going to be at the table. The city and the county are going to play by rules of the game that we community members approve of. And of course, as Measure G came underway in 2024 onto the ballots, RLA was literally at the table learning more in real time. And in its passage after November 2024, we have been committed to seeing where the Measure G task force goes with its implementation tasks. So today you're going to catch up on a lot of what's been happening behind the scenes on Measure G implementation. Go ahead and click, Jackie. I want to shout out our colleague, by the way, Alejandra Ponce de Leon in the chat box, who helps lead the RLA coalition, which is why she's asking about different questions in the chat box. So during this call, here's what we're going to do. There's a lot of catching up that we want to make sure this group gets to do. So the first thing is I'm going to lead us through some just basics about LA County governance. It's easy to mix up with other forms of government, so I want to get really clear on what LA County does, who LA County is, and what it's responsible for. Then I'm going to pass things to my colleague Jackie, who you see actually in the bottom of the screen, and now she's there with the palm trees. My colleague Jackie, after I go over some basics of LA County governance, will really lead us through the rest of the call, because she's been really in the loop on Measure G, what's happening around it, can clarify what it is, what reforms it's trying to move forward, and the timeline for the various reforms that the Measure G task force is taking up. The reason why we are going through these various reforms and through this timeline is because we want the people on this call to plug in. And clearly right now there's only, there's only a dozen and a half or so people on this call. The goal here is to begin spreading the word and getting more people in the loop. We're recording this for that exact reason, to make sure that this is accessible to other folks who want to catch up to all of this online. And so you'll be able to share this information via YouTube link and via LA Forward's website for the months to come. At the end, we're going to do some Q&A. And so what's useful is we have actually created a Q&A document. On the document that I just put into the chat box and that you see on the screen, I want to direct questions that you have there What we're going to do is we're going to talk through all the various bullet points that you see on your screen. So as questions arise, we don't want to get distracted in the chat box while we're trying to facilitate. So we're going to kindly ask you to go to this document, tinyurl.com/measuregg101, place your questions there. And at the end of the conversation, we're going to revisit that document and moderate through some of the themes of questions that you have there. If we don't know the answer, there's a couple of us here who are plugged in, and we're hoping to respond. I actually think I see at least one staff member of a county official here, so maybe they also know some answers as well if there's questions that come up during this conversation. Go ahead and click, Jackie. I do want to make sure that I'm uplifting what we are wanting from this. What we're wanting from this, of course, is that you all are plugging in. So I just want to plug some of the ideas we have, and we're going to revisit these at the very end. Right now, GRTF, that stands for Governance Reform Task Force. This is a task force of people that you're going to get to know on this call on a slide. And they're having meetings right now talking about implementation of Measure G. But how many of us are actually watching? So we're thinking, should we have watch parties for these task force meetings so that folks like the ones on this call are able to talk about those various task force conversations and decisions? It may be that there's enough interest on this call that folks want to create a work group at LA Forward so that we keep coming back to Measure G, so that you don't have to wait for a Measure G 101 to keep talking about this. You can build a community of people plugged in to Measure G. We know that part of what happens at the county too is investing in all the various services at the county level. That's a lot of money, billions of dollars that we are investing annually at LA County. And we want to make sure that as part of responsible governance, you all know how the county does that. What is the budget process? How do you get involved in that? So we're thinking about doing a teach-in in the future. And of course, we want to give you opportunities to meet with the task force directly in real space and time, could be on Zoom or in person. So these are just some of the things that we're thinking about, but we want to revisit these at the end of the call to see which of these things you gravitate toward. Go ahead, Jackie. Go ahead and click through the next slide. There you go. So let's get started. Go ahead and click. Let's remind ourselves exactly how big LA County is. It's bigger than a couple of, it's more populous than a couple of states, more than a couple, as you see on your bullet point on your slide. LA County, with its 10 million residents, is actually more populous than 40 states. That means we are bigger than 40 states. There's 88 cities in LA County. LA City often dominates the conversation, but there's 87 other ones. And then not to be forgotten are unincorporated communities. Unincorporated communities means that there's no city government, i.e. a mayor or city council, supporting directly the community members who live in an unincorporated area. Unincorporated community members get served directly by LA County. It's really big. You see a map there for those of you who are more spatially or visually interested in learning about this. But in order to serve all 10 million residents, there are over 100,000 employees at the county level with 38 different departments. What's wild to me is that all of this is led by 5 supervisors. That means each of the 5 supervisors who are elected by us govern over 2 million people each. Go ahead, Jackie. Again, sometimes it's really easy to get mixed up between what city services look like and what county policies and services look like. So we've offered a Venn diagram on your screen. You can take a picture of it if you'd like, just to keep it, handy on your phone. You can screenshot it. This is not a clean Venn diagram. This is just a little basic offering of what is typically offered by a city. Remember, there's 88 cities in the county, and then what's offered by the county itself. So I'm in Los Angeles City, and I can look to Los Angeles City for some basic municipal services on the left side of this Venn diagram. Things like street cleanings, land use policies that determine how housing is built and zoned in LA City. I look to the county for a number of other things. I look for the county for a Department of Mental Health. The county runs the county jails, for example. The Department of Public Health that led us through the COVID crisis is a county offering. And then there are things in the middle here that are in this Venn diagram of city and county. This is where it depends. Depending on the city, If it's not if it's not LA City, but it's a city in the county, it may have its own police department, or possibly it could receive its law enforcement from the sheriff's department. Different cities contract with a county sheriff's department, or they may create their own police department. So it gets a little bit tricky with the stuff in the middle, and it kind of just depends. And remember that there's also these unincorporated areas that are served primarily by the county as well, because they don't have a city structure. Go ahead, Jackie. All of this is not new. We established all of this, the 5-member board structure. We've kept that since 1852. So it's over 150 years old, 170 years old, maybe 175 years old, something like that. Um, and we're finally revisiting it because of Measure G. And so what we're doing is we're just revising this thing that has created the governance structure for our county. Go ahead, Jackie. I'm going to pass things to Jackie now to walk us through what you all are here for, which is all about the measure. Remember, I just want to remind folks that the Measure G Q&A document is in the chat box. I'm going to put there again, and that's where you should put any questions that are coming up for you as we go along. Jackie?
Thank you, Godfrey. Thank you for kicking us off. I'm going to take it from here and dive into more of what Measure G is. And hello, everyone who I haven't met yet. My name is Jacqueline Cotto. I'm the Senior Director of Advocacy and Partnership here at LA Forward. So if you have any questions so far, please drop them in the Google Doc in the link that Godfrey listed previously. And our partner, actually, Alejandra Ponce de Leon, will also be helping us with answering those questions for you as we go along, so that we don't have to wait till the end. So I will start by giving you a little bit of context of Measure G, which pretty much came in July 2024. The Board of Supervisors, they were the ones who advanced a charter to amend the governance of the county. And this charter was advanced so that it would go on the November ballot. And then in November 2024, the LA County voters approved the measure, the LA County governance reform that we now know as Measure G. And this measure brings massive reforms to the county's governing restructuring that had remained essentially unchanged for over 170 years. It's crazy, right? And so the amendment includes several key provisions aimed to enhancing governance with significant milestones. And one of them is the mandate to have an entirely new budget oversight process, which includes a new position of the Director of Budget and Management, who will be responsible to implementing the new budget process. And I'll go into it a little bit more later. But the second mandate is that it strengthens ethics commission. It creates an elected county executive position. It expands the board from 5 supervisors to 9, right? We just heard from Godfrey that we just have 5 and how they take a lot from such a big county. And it also establishes a charter review commission. So I'll go over each of these mandates on the following slides. But let's see. With the reform actually came a mandate to create the Governance Reform Task Force. And what the task force is actually a 13-member body that is charged with implementing these amendments to the charter. They advise the board on matters related to the governance transition. They are responsible to lead the key provisions that I just showed in the previous slides. They are also responsible to integrate community and stakeholder input into every phase of the process. And they are supported by county staff. They have external consultants that help them throughout the way. And the task force will conclude their work by December 2028, unless extended by the board. So they're not a permanent task force. And why this matters is because the recommendations will shape the county's new governance systems. They will be the ones shaping it on how it will work. So it is critical that community voice gets integrated through the process. And because this is a once in a generation opportunity for us to weigh in and build a more representative and accountable county department that we haven't had before. So I want to invite you here really quickly to pause, and I want to invite you to drop in the chat if you're interested in helping shape the government reform. Please let us know if you're interested in it because this is, we want to know how much resources and opportunities to offer you. But this here is the 13-member task force. Yeah, meet them. Meet them in the screen right now. They are made up of experts, community leaders, and stakeholders. Again, they serve as an advisory board, an advisory role to the board. They started to convene last May in 2025. They started to get together and they do meet to facilitate the charter's implementation process. So as mentioned before, we are part of our LA coalition, and through the coalition, we're establishing ourselves as trusted partners to build direct relationships with these members of the task force because community voices need to be at the table from the very beginning. And so to us, these relationships matter as they shape the county's future. So we want to make sure that voices are heard, that community voices reach the decision makers, which are in this moment are these 13 task force members. They do serve on various ad hoc committees depending on the mandates that they're working on. They meet every 2 weeks on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. We can join virtually. I am virtually viewing it with Alejandra. So if you're interested in, perhaps we want to create a GRTF watch party so that we're all listening in live and listening to their conversations, to the decision making that they're doing. We can call in to weigh in that moment. The next meeting is next Wednesday at 5 p.m. So please do let us know in the chat if that's something that you would like us to coordinate, like a simple watch party. We're happy to take it from there. So I'll dive more deep into the reform now, the key provisions of Measure G, but there are a few milestones in the timeline that I want to highlight. Um, Mind you that the implementation process goes beyond past 2030. But right now you'll see that, in 2024, the measure passed. In 2025, the task force was established, and there were a few immediate provisions that took place, that took effect immediately. But right now we are in 2026, and this is where we are now. It's February. Last month in January, the new budget reform process took effect, which was one of the immediate provisions that needed to take effect. So that puts us in February, which the departmental budget presentations for this fiscal year will begin starting February 12th. Then between February and April, proposals to create the ethics compliance, those conversations have already began to take shape because by December, the full ethics commission, the full ethics compliance package needs to be established. So that's where we are in 2026. So, like I mentioned, there were some provisions that took effect immediately, and it was to authorize the suspension of elected county officers, including board members charged with felonies, violations of officials' rules. That took effect immediately. It also required a revolving door policy prohibiting former county officials from lobbying for 2 years post-service. Another provision that took effect is to require Measure G implementation to use existing county funds with no additional tax or costs to us, the taxpayers. So that was also like an immediate implementation. And it mandates county departments to present budgets to the board in public meetings before budget adoption. I'll go into that actually next. Um, so yeah, the budget reform, it did take effect immediately. The reform now requires that each county department present their budgets in front of the boards in public board meetings. This is to be implemented beginning this year for this cycle, 2026 and 2027. So the task force last month they submitted a set of recommendations to the board to establish a process for this budget mandate. Um, and that includes a cluster presentation model, which groups departments into different sort of like thematic presentations based on, for example, public safety will present, health department will present, community services will be clustered together. And so that's the model that they recommended. They will also have a fixed annual presentation window that establishes like a recurring time frame designated so that we know exactly when the budget timeline is. They recommended designating February as the annual month for public budget presentation. So that's why this year presentations are actually taking place February 12th, 13th, 17th, and 27. And so the county is preparing a QR code that will be displayed during the presentations at the Board of Supervisors meetings that will link to a questionnaire where the public can provide input. And that input will then be shared with the task force for the reviews and to take into consideration for the process. The task force is also recommending transparency and public access materials by creating a centralized information hub. And this is to have like a one place stop, easy to find online locations for all budget related materials. They are recommending accessible presentation materials with 88 in language access. They are also including performance evaluations that will require the departments to include a summary of performances outcomes, goals, measurable metrics, and actually also take in stakeholder engagement in the process that would incorporate input from the actual service end users. And for the public education and engagement piece, they are recommending to produce very plain language videos, materials, surveys, and also consider participatory budget practices. So these recommendations were approved by the Board of Supervisors on June 6, 2026. So it's been adopted and it's in play right now. Why this matters is because, as the new public budget presentation process increases transparency, there is more accountability because it'll be public. And this will offer opportunities for the public to engage in the decision making, a decision making that we've actually never had before, right? In the budget, also, there is a mandate to create a new position for the titled the Director of Budget and Management. And this position will be responsible to administer this new budget process, right? So we have this opportunity coming up next week, in the next few days, to engage in having a say in the budget. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat if you would be also interested, for example, in an LA County 101 budget session, LA County Budget 101. If you would be interested in a session like that, we can Think about putting a teaching on that. That way you could be ready when the presentations come up, and let us know if that's something that will be helpful. Let us know in the chat so we can see about offering something like that for you. All right, the next mandate is on the ethics compliance piece. And first of all, one of the things is what is ethics, right? And basically, compliance in LA County means making sure county officials and employees follow clear rules that promote honesty, transparency, and accountability, and how public power and public resources are used. The uh, the county currently does not have an independent ethics commission. Instead, the ethics oversight is fragmented across multiple departments. So the Measure G, a mandate, brings in major ethics accountability package. There's different components that are designated to increase transparency. And one of the reforms is actually to create an independent ethics commission. They will have the authority to investigate the misconducts, enforce the ethics ruling for lobbying and conflict of interest rules. They will oversee the compliance and the enforcement across all the county departments, across the county government, and they'll be responsible for issuing penalties for violations because the county has never had an independent ethics commission, so it's very hard to implement this without one. So that's one piece of the ethics compliance. The second piece is to support the commission. Measure G will require the creation of an office of ethics compliance. So you have the commission and then you have the office. And the office will provide support to the ethics commission. They will conduct training to the county officials and the staff, and they will monitor the rules, disclosures, and the reporting. And then the third piece of that is to lead the ethics compliance and the department. There will be a creation of an ethics compliance officer. So they will be responsible for the day-to-day compliance across the departments, right? This is, I think, really important to know because the deliberations for the creation of these ethics compliance pieces, they've already begun. They're taking shape right now, like last week, because this needs to be established by December so that they begin operations in 2027. So what's happening now is that the ad hoc committee that is developing, the pieces to this, they have proposed to publish and present a draft set of recommendations on February 11th. That's next Wednesday. And then there will be 30 or so days for public review of that proposal. That is where there's that key window of opportunity for community engagement to give input on this proposal, especially because it's important to have input on who and how commissioners will be appointed. Then on March 18th, they will publish final recommendations. They will take in public input, and make a final recommendations on March 18th. March 25th, the recommendations will come to the full task force because it's the ad hoc who will put that together and then present it to the full task force for consideration and vote. And then in April, that proposal will be presented to the entire Board of Supervisors. And this timeline is going this way because they want to make sure there's budget allocated in time in May, so that by December, this is already established, right? And again, it's coming up so fast. And I think that one opportunity for us here as a community is to think about, could we come together and form a study group to review these recommendations, right? Help each other build power together and be prepared to offer input. Let us know if that's something that you would be also interested in doing. This is, again, another key window of opportunity for this mandate. All right. Now I'm jumping into the Board of Supervisors and the changes that are coming. As you know, currently we have 5 elected supervisors that oversee the 5 districts with a lot of people, 2 million people, that they serve, expanding hundreds of miles. They are in charge of setting county policies, making budget decisions. They hire and fire department heads. They set policies for the public health, social services, jails, transportation. And they also serve on various boards that on from different agencies, including like the Metro, AQMD, etc. What the reform brings is an expansion of 5 supervisors to now 9, starting in 2032. And so I've laid out a little bit of like the timeline of what that may look like, right? So for example, in 2030, we have the census coming up, and this data is needed for redistricting. In 2031, LA County redistricting takes place because they need to draw the lines for the new 9 supervisorial district. Now, I just want to make sure to note that the census and the redistricting are not part of Measure D. They're not part of the mandate, but they are a critical component to fulfill the mandate of the 9 supervisors expansion. So that in 2032, all 9 supervisors are elected for the very first time under the new maps. Something interesting that I learned is that right after the 2032 elections of the 9, 4 of them will be 4 seats will be randomly selected and be assigned a 2-year term. And that is needed to create the staggering election cycles that we currently have. We currently have staggering election cycles, but now we need to establish it for the 9. So these 4 seats will run again in 2034. Then in 2034, this is where the staggered elections for the 4 supervisors begin, so that they start not serving a 4th term moving forward. And then in 2036, the 5 supervisors will be elected, re-elected for the 4-year term. And this will complete the staggered cycle, establishing like a 4 and 5 staggered full terms, moving forward. Why this matters. Think about how that this would create more representation with now 9 supervisors instead of 5. We get more voices at the table, especially in communities that have been historically overlooked. This will create a space for leadership to do a better job at that. And also reflect that diversity of the LA County. This creates smaller districts. Right now, again, the supervisors represent about 2 million people. That's more than the population of 14 US states. So smaller districts mean residents are competing to get their services attended to, right? And it becomes easier for communities to be prioritized. The elected officials become more accessible. Supervisors can spend more time in the community, build more deeper relationships, and respond more quickly to the residents' needs. A more realistic way for residents to get what they need met. And it becomes a more equitable distribution of power. With only 5 supervisors, each holds enormous power over, right now, over the budget, the services, the policies. So expanding it to 9 helps that balance of power. It creates a governance structure that's more it's less concentrated. All right, let me look at the time, because we have a lot to go on. Really quickly, this is what the current 5 elected supervisors are right now. Each serve three 4-year term, and they also run staggered elections. Some of them are coming up. They're on their final term. Um, and we'll be have new ones coming in. All right, looking at the time, I'm gonna go into the elected county position. We currently do have a CEO. We have a chief executive officer. This is not an elected position. This is an appointed position, historically appointed by the Board of Supervisors. The CEO is currently responsible for managing day-to-day operations for the nation's largest municipality, right? It oversees the 15 plus billion-dollar budget, the 38 departments, and 64 bargaining units. It's huge. What the reform brings is changes to the current appointed CEO position and creates a new elected CEO position in November 2028. This is meant to establish a separation of powers between the executive and the legislative branches. It also aligns the county with governance models used in other jurisdictions, like the city government, which is the mayor plus the city council, the state, the governor plus legislature, federal, the president and Congress. It mirrors that. But why it matters? Well, this is a really important information to know because this position shifts nearly all executive and administrative powers from the Board of Supervisors, excluding the oversight of a legislative analyst position. But it just shifts the powers. It gives explicit authority to lead all county emergency response efforts, prepares and proposes county budget, appoints and directs department heads, implements and enforces county laws and policies, manages countywide operations, and issues executive orders. This position will have the power to veto budget amendments, with subject to an override possibility by a majority vote of the board. And this position really is considered the second most powerful elected official in California, trailing the governor because it's so big, right? So we want to flag that the task force has already started conversation about designing the structure, the framework for this position. So we are looking to have opportunities for community to weigh in on this because it's such an important, powerful role that the Measure G has created. The Charter Review Commission, the task force next major responsibility is also to design a process to be permanent, to create a charter review commission. And the task force will be defining who serves on it, how they will be appointed, what powers they will have, and how it will guide future reforms. But right now, the reform establishes, to create this independent body to meet every 10 years. This commission will be the body responsible for examining the existing charter and proposing revisions in the future to tweak any needs that may be needed, any reforms that voters approve. They are to produce formal recommendations and updates for the board to adopt, amend, or place before the voters. Right now, this is just speculative, a possible tentative timeline that I think might be coming related to the Charter Review Commission. I think the task force may, start designing its framework this year. They may propose this to the Board of Supervisors. They propose the recommendations for adoption and approval this year or next year. It's possible that the commission could be established between 2027 and 28. And but for sure by 2034, the Charter Review Commission officially convenes. So this will be something that also will be on the lookout on when those conversations start with the task force. So again, a snapshot beyond 2027. I have touched on the previous slides, kind of where each of the upcoming years fall, like through 2036 and beyond. But one of the ones that I do want to highlight in this timeline is the independent county legislative analyst position. This is a new position that will be created and it will be established in 2028. This position is meant to provide a non-partisan legislative support to the Board of Supervisors on issues like policy issues, fiscal and operation matters. All right. So some points of engagement that I think are important for you to know is, again, community engagement matters. It matters to us a lot, so that the reform reflects like real community voices in the process, in the decision making. So the Measure G, actually does mandate a community-centered implementation process, including conducting public hearings, having community convenings, ensuring transparent reporting, and providing opportunities for residents to shape recommendations. That is the task force's responsibility to establish and implement. This is where us, the community at LA Forward, our community can play a crucial role to strengthen and shape the implementation. We can look at meaningful opportunities like a two-way engagement, meaning creating a space for us to meet with the task force so they can directly hear from you, right? An opportunity to create a Measure G work group. Again, to stay updated and plugged in on what the process is, live. We can host another teaching like this one. You have the opportunity to attend the public hearings and community convenings, offer feedback to the task force on the proposals they recommend. But we can provide public comments on crucial items. And we can share and disseminate educational materials with networks. We can support our outreach and underrepresented communities to get their voices heard. So again, here's another snapshot of the upcoming dates that I've mentioned. The ethics compliance reforms on February 11th, the next GRTF meeting next week. I put in the link here if you are interested in looking at their upcoming meetings in the near future, in the next upcoming month. And then tentatively, they just proposed this, and this is tentatively, still hasn't been fully approved, but there's a proposal for community engagement activities. They're looking at having focus groups between now and February 18th. They are also looking into offering surveys, polls, and have a second focus group between February 25 and March 18th. So those are two that are coming up that I'd love for you to get, plugged in, stay engaged, stay informed, that the task force is going to put together. And then again, the budget presentations that are coming up, right? So I'm going to be handing the mic back to my colleague, Godfrey, who will take it from here. Thank you, everyone. I hope I didn't go too fast.
Thanks, Jackie. Not at all. That was plenty of information. If folks could give a hand to Jackie, either with your actual on-camera hands or the chat box, or I see Jorge's got the emoji hands as well as some other folks. And Jackie, if it's any sort of evidence of how intriguing all the stuff you put down on the table was, the Q&A document is popping. Just so you know,
Oh,
we've been
good.
keeping track, and we've been keeping track in the chat box too of where people are interested in ethics, budget 101, all those things.
I love
I
it.
do want to come back to this, set of activities on your screen. We presented these at the very beginning of today's presentation by Jackie. And I've been asking you on a scale of 1 to 5 how interested you are in various things in the chat box, but I'm going to do a different thing. It's not a scale anymore. You see 5 different activities on your screen, and I'd be curious in the chat box, put the number or numbers of the various activities you're most interested in the chat box. You can do more than one, right? Like if you're interested in the watch parties, put down number 1. If you're interested in actually creating a community of people and keeping up with a community of people interested in Measure G, put number 2. If you're interested in that budget 101 teach-in, we think some of you all had mentioned that earlier. But say so again. I captured your names before, but you can say so again by putting the number 3 in the chat box. If you want to meet and greet with the task force members who Jackie put up photos of earlier today, that's a really great way to make sure like you have a direct line to the commission as they proceed for the next few years. Not commission, task force over the next few years. You can put down number 4. If you just want to be caught up on updates, put down number 5, and that's fine too. We all have different lives. But I'm seeing in the chat box a couple of 4s, 3s, and 5s in particular that we'll be sure to capture. I know folks are still putting down their numbers, so I'm not going to click on the screen just yet, but want to give you all a sense of where folks are interested. Thank you all so much for chiming in. We had only one watch party of folks. People want to learn at this group. People want to learn and meet the task force. It seems is where the energy is.
Lucio won't be alone. He'll be joining Alejandra and me.
There you go. There you go. Party of 3. Maybe more as we continue to grow, because it's for a couple of years, right? Jackie, if you could click to the next slide, please. And I think on the next slide, we are headed into Q&A. So actually, I'd love for folks to